Satu is visiting us from the University of Helsinki, and I think just in the last couple of days the final paperwork has gone through, so we officially have a memorandum of understanding with the University of Helsinki, and the main investigator there that we're working with is Katarina Salmela-Aro. Have I got that pronunciation? No. In case you haven't noticed, I didn't even try to pronounce Satu's last name, but she'll tell you what the correct pronunciation is. So it's quite exciting that we've got our first visiting scholar as part of this memorandum of understanding, and I noticed that Phil and Jesse were both pointing out where in this photo they were located when they were visiting Helsinki, and I also visited there as well, and Satu and I discussed the early stages of the project that she's going to talk about. Now, she's a PhD student, so this is very much of a formative project, but it's a very interesting one because it's quite an interesting database. It's a 9-year longitudinal study, so there's some real interesting implications, and where all it's going to go is still a little bit up in the air, but there's all sorts of interesting possibilities for that. And so Satu is going to explore with you some of the directions that she's thinking of going and give a little bit of background as to what that is. And we'll look at this as more of a formative brown bag rather than a summative one.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so my name is Satu Koivuhovi, and I come from the
you want to pronounce that, the last name slowly?
Koivuhovi.
Now you understand why I did
it.
Everybody repeat after me.
And I come from the University of Helsinki. And first of all, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. I've been here now for 1 week, and already I feel that I've learned a lot, so it has been a great experience already now. But yeah, this presentation is, as Herb said, quite like not so like formal one, but I'm going to just tell a few words about myself and what I have done so far, and also talk about the Finnish basic education school system, and then present you the database that I have used in my studies, and because that would be also the data that I would use here, and therefore I thought that it would be good to introduce that a bit more. And then also at the end there are like few ideas of what I would like to do here, and I hope that we can like have a fruitful discussion after that, so that if you have any like ideas for me to give also. And also I would like to hear like what you think about all this, what I have done so far. Yeah. Okay. But first here I wanted to like show you where I come from. So this is like the building from the other direction. So I think that you were talking that you were in this building, and then Phil was in that like, which is not in the picture, that old blue building. Yeah, and I sit somewhere like there. So this is, we have like this nice old building which is like nice to work there. And as said, this is the Faculty of Educational Sciences in the University of Helsinki, and I have worked especially in the Center of Educational Assessment, which is like a small unit there. And we have been like doing things together with Katarina Salmela-Aro, but she's not like my supervisor or anything like that. But these are actually my 2 supervisors from the Center of Educational Assessment. Here is Jarkko Hautamäki, who is an old professor who has like made many things there, and he's the leader of the unit. And then there is Kosunen Vainikainen, who is my first supervisor and also been many years in the Center for Educational Assessment. And then here are some of the other people who are working there. And I wanted to show you this picture because we are talking about those social network analysis that we are maybe doing here. And this person here, Natalia, is very important for those because we have this long follow-up study that we have been doing, well now already over 16 years, but it has been quite a long process, and Natalia has been the person who has organized all the data collections, and especially when we did those sociograms, she was really active, and she almost knows all the kids by name because she has been in the school so much that she's important because of that. Okay, and maybe before I go on, I must say about myself that I have done my masteral thesis on the field of educational policy and sociology. So this whole educational psychology is still quite new to me, because I have been more into systemal approaches and that kind of stuff. But I will explain why I'm now here and how my path has gone. But because of my own background, and also I thought that it would be interesting for you to know something about the Finnish school system, but also it's easy way for me to approach issues through this systems. So, but as you all probably know, that Finnish basic education system is strongly the equality is a strong value there. I think that many almost all the people who I've been talking with, and when they hear that I'm from Finland, they always say that okay, you're from the PISA land, and it's that everybody knows the Finnish PISA success, and we both have the good achievement results, but also we have fairly equal schooling system, and that has been the core value during this all the time when we have had this comprehensive school system. And basically our present kind of comprehensive school system was established in 1970s, and that ended the streaming system we had before. And after that it has been really important goal that all the kids could go to school and have similar kind of opportunities for learning, regardless of their gender or social background or where they come from. So equality has been really strong value that we've had. But despite of this, in 1990s we had kind of this neoliberal trend in our schooling system, as in also in many other countries, of course. But as a consequence of that, our not only school but larger in whole society, the state's role became less clear, and municipalities get more power, and this is also visible in our education system at the moment, that there are certain types of differences between municipalities, and they have more power to say what they want to do in their schools. One of the consequences that became possible after 1990s reform was school choice, and we don't have this kind of open school choice. I will tell you about that more a bit later. But during those changes, also these kind of selective classes with special emphasis came to our system. And here are some like important issues of our schooling system. Well, first of all, the comprehensive school is 9 year long, and it comprises of primary school, which is like the first 6 years, and then there is lower secondary school, grades 7 to 9. And all the children start school at that year when they turn 7. And here is actually one of my children starting his school and waiting for goodbye. So, and I also wanted to take this picture because for me, one weird thing that I noticed here is that all the kids wear like school uniforms, and we don't have those kind of uniforms in Finland, so it has been nice to see all the small children going to school with their uniforms here. I see it like really like exotic. So it's weird. And then basically all our schools in the basic education level are public schools. We have like few private schools, but they have like similar kind of rules as public schools, though they don't like make much different. So basically you can say that we have this kind of public school system. And also we don't have any tuition fees on the basic education level, and no national examination in the compulsory schooling. And also we have, of course, assessment, but it is sample based, so there are no league tables or anything like that you cannot like say which school is better. And it has been like a strong like value that we have wanted to keep that way. That, for example, even in Sweden, which is our neighbor country, they changed their system in 1990s to like so that they have more or less this like that they can do ranking lists from schools, but in Finland there has been like strong opposing for those. And also the school choice, which became possible in that time, it's really limited if you compare it like internationally. So it's only that families can like say that okay, we would like that our kids would go to this school, but still it's like that they cannot like say that okay, he will go there. So there are like other kind of rules for how the school is given to children. But
is that by geographical location?
Yeah, basically geographical location is the most important, and then also like if you have siblings in another, like in certain school, then you can try. But basically that's why these kind of selective classes are so important, because they are like a road for some families who want to choose a school to actually do the choosing. Because if your kids gets into this kind of selective class, then you can like at the similar time, for example, avoid some certain school if you want. So that's why they are like important. And basically these kind of classes with special emphasis have only like 2 hours per week more teaching in some emphasized subject. But they do select their pupils with aptitude tests. So basically this is like a way to choose that if you pass these aptitude tests, then you can go to that school where this class is, or then you can like get into this kind of like special class. So therefore it's like that some families use this as a way to get like better for their child. And there are like three main times for choosing a class in Finland. First is in the beginning of schooling, and then in the beginning of 3rd grade, and then in the beginning of 7th grade. So it is possible to change also school at that point. And in Helsinki, which is the capital in Finland, and it is the city where my data is collected, the options to choose these kind of classes are quite wide. So this whole kind of like selective classes is quite an urban phenomenon in Finland. So that in countryside there is not so many these kind of classes, but for example in Helsinki there are like many types of different classes from you can choose. And prior studies on school choice and classes with these kind of emphasized classes have shown that those families who choose these classes are quite like they're like the parents are well educated and they're like on a better social class. So it's like it's somehow like making those classes or groups in the classes more like so that they are like collecting children from like affluent background and also those children are usually very well achieving at school. So therefore these classes are like different types than many other classes. And that is the reason why many researchers in Finland have been like worried about these classes, because they feel that it like threatens the equality of our schooling system, and they like form these kind of implicit tracks into our system. Yeah, and also one interesting thing is that because we don't have like large differences between schools in Finland, like for example in PISA, our differences between schools are really low. But then again, these within school differences, so basically differences within classes, they are quite large. And for example, when we compare it to other Scandinavian countries in Finland, the differences between classes are larger than in other Scandinavian countries. So therefore, these kind of selective classes are increasing the within school differences, and therefore they are important subject to study. And when I did my master's thesis, I concentrate on to study on the reasons why families choose these kind of emphasized classes. And there it came out that many families like argue that okay, they want that their child goes to this kind of selective classes because they believe that that will like benefit their child, so that they will be more motivated to school and they will learn like more in the school than in these kind of general classes. And also these kind of arguments concerning children's motivation were present in 1990s when this kind of like system was built. So it is like strongly argued that these selective classes will have an influence on pupils' motivation. But then there are no like actual research made on that in Finland, so it's only like hypothetical speak. And that is like what I like wanted to do in my PhD. So that is like the idea behind all this project, why I started to study this topic. And basically so far I have concentrated on pupils' action control beliefs in my PhD. So I have like one published manuscript, which is this first one where I looked for the change in children's agency beliefs and control expectancy in primary school level. And well, the main finding in that research was that these classes did not have any impact on the change of pupils, either agency beliefs or control expectancy beliefs. So like all these background variables like mother's educational level and gender and GPA were those who actually explain the change in for example, pupils' agency beliefs of ability, which means like how much the child believes his own abilities to do well. And then the class type didn't have like any effect on that. And the second study which I'm writing at the moment is basically like to do this same thing in the lower secondary school years. I have done it a bit differently because in the primary school data we have not so many of these emphasized classes, that I have done it so that I have just like compared general classes versus emphasized classes. But in this second study I have managed to look like different types of emphasis, so that I have there like mathematics classes, sport classes, language classes, and then arts, and then all the general classes. And it has been quite challenging for me to do it like methodologically, because there have been like many issues that I haven't like known how to do it, and I have like learned it at the same time when I have been doing it. But this second article I've done so that I have mainly done those analyses in SPSS with repeated measures of variance. So, and that there I have a few slides which I have there, which show that because in this like lower secondary school, or at this like second manuscript that I have, there I found some interesting results, even though at the primary school level I didn't. But in the lower secondary school years there was some interesting results. For example, here is now the agency belief of ability, and here are the different types of classes. And basically, in all the cases, it went like that. That when we included the background variables, that means mother's education level and gender, then all the level differences in the action control beliefs disappeared between classes. But then, for example, in this, this is a language class, which is this red line here, and this is a sports class. Okay, but no, okay, in this picture, yeah, this language class, like this change in their ability beliefs from grade 7 to 9 is significant, but in other classes it is not. So that means that pupils who attended these kind of language classes, their ability beliefs decreased from grade 7 to 9. Which is quite interesting, because that is like the opposite direction that families in Finland like think. And also a similar kind of result was regarding control expectancy of success. That means like how much a child believes that he can like control his own success. And also here you can see that both in language classes and also in sports classes, which are those black ones, the strength of these beliefs like decreased. And then I have the final picture here, which is then again these like mean sense beliefs of luck in this picture, which is like a bad thing for learning if you believe that like your success is a matter of like luck or chance. So it will like make you make you try less. And also in this, you can see that in language classes and in sports classes, these like harmful beliefs increased during this time span. So I think that I found these like results really interesting because they are exactly the opposite of that what Finnish, like both politicians and families expect. And there we can like maybe find the reason why I came here. Because okay, now
Were the grades different in those different classes? As in, were some classes the average grade might be lower than other classes? Like the language class was much harder, perhaps?
Yeah. Actually, it went like so that in language classes are the most selective classes, so that they had like best grades in the beginning of 7th grade, and also when we checked the mother's educational level, they were like most of the kids whose mothers were like really highly educated, so they are like the most selective classes. Then again, those sports classes are a bit different. They are like much more similar to like general classes. So I think that the explanation behind these is maybe a bit like different on why something is happening on language classes and why something is happening on sports classes. But I think that especially on those language classes, this change what we see is like something that might be explained with some kind of big fish phenomena there behind. But I'm not saying that yet, but that's like one of the ideas.
But are they great? I guess that's one explanation. They're comparing
Yeah.
themselves to each other and everybody seems to be so brilliant. But the other one is, are the grades just lower? Like, is it like the feedback they're receiving is you're doing worse than, say, the feedback they get in a different class?
No, I didn't actually understand.
So, like, let's say I have to use American. So,
Yeah.
one class the average is B and the other class the average is a C.
Yeah.
If you were in the C class, you would think worse of yourself. If the average person in that class had lower grades, they would think worse of themselves than the class that averaged higher grades.
Yeah.
Compared to class A.
Okay, so in lots of
Within
classes,
class, they may
in
not.
lots of educational
That would be more
situations, there's grading on a curve.
Yeah.
So if you're in a high ability group, a selective class,
Yeah.
the middle of that class would be a very bright person,
Yeah.
and they might get only a B rather than an A, but
Yeah.
that same person, if they were in a general class, would probably get an A.
Yeah.
So I think what you're asking is, can this be explained by a grading on a curve kind of effect?
Or like the fact that they're objectively getting feedback that they're not doing very well. So
Yeah, but still, because their grades are actually better than on general classes, so it doesn't like.
okay, that would rule out that
Yeah.
effect.
Yeah.
I mean, normally what we find when we look at the big fish, little pond kind of stuff is that certainly a good portion of it can be explained by the grades that people get because they get lower grades, but not all of it. And that there's still a big fish, little pond effect after you control for grades. But it gets confounded because it's sort of a similar process.
Yeah.
The gradient on a curve and the social comparison. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But then a few words for the data that I have been using. So it's a follow-up study where we have followed up the same children from the first grade until the last grade of the comprehensive school. And the data is collected in the Center for Educational Assessment, which is the place I show you. And you can visit our websites and also go to our Facebook sites because I want to invite you all. We are hosting a conference on next summer, so if you are planning a trip to Europe or to Finland, come there. It's a nice international European conference. But basically, what we have done in the Center for Educational Assessment is these kind of learning-to-learn assessments, which include both like cognitive aspects and then this kind of affective, self-evaluative, self-belief aspects. And these cognitive factors include like different types of tests which measure children's cognitive abilities. We have different types of reading comprehension skills, and then mathematical thinking tests, and then like this general thinking types of tests. And yeah, but all tests, all our assessments always include both these cognitive aspects and other like more motivational beliefs. And here are like the assessment points for this data. So basically we have done so that in the beginning there was only 16 schools, which was like a random sample in Helsinki, and then like always when children have changed school or changed class, we have took the new class in this data too. So therefore, like in the first phase, there was only a little bit more than 700 pupils. But then at the end, we have like all the ninth graders in Helsinki in that year. So it's like
it's very unusual to see a longitudinal study go that direction.
Yeah.
So I had that problem.
Yeah.
It's the opposite.
And we have done these are all like the learning-to-learn assessment points, and then we have also gathered sociograms, and then kind of these like additional reading and mathematical testings. And then also, especially during the primary school time, teachers and parents answered to these kind of questionnaires where they assessed like each pupil's learning and behavior and social skills. And then also questions at 6th and 7th grade. There were questions concerning school choice and choice of these special classes.
Were all of your affective measures domain general, or were some of them domain specific? Like, for example, did you have anything that was specific to math or language or anything?
Yes, we had. Yeah.
So there's a mixture of domain general and domain specific.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And here are like a collection of some of the self-evaluative scales that we have used, and it must be noticed that not all of these have been like there in all the measurement points, and that has been like when I started to do my study, it was quite difficult to find out a combination of measures which to use. Because always when I found something interesting, I noticed that okay, they haven't used this before. But basically, there's quite a variation of different types of self-beliefs. Academic self-concept is actually almost only of those which has been measured on each measurement point, and we have divided into this math, reading and writing and thinking self-concepts. Yeah, and then we also have a different variation of this kind of classroom climate and atmosphere and friends and stuff like that. But there's a combination of many theories there. And then these sociograms, which is one of those reasons also why I'm here. They have been collected at 2nd and 5th grade, and then it was collected so that pupils answered to these 3 questions. So they were given an opportunity to name a maximum of 5 persons from their classes who they work with on school tasks, and then played with during breaks, and then played with after school. And then I have like a few examples just to show you. One interesting, I have not analyzed any of these social crumbs. Actually, I don't think that, well, my supervisor Mari Pauliina has done some analysis with those, but we have not actually used those. We have quite a lot of data that nobody uses. It's like, yeah. But this is one example from one class at 2nd grade, where you can see that these red are girls and these blue are boys. And this is an example from 2nd grade. And then this is the same class at 5th grade. So as you can see, there are not anymore these kind of arrows going from girls to boys or that way. So it will say that girls play together when they grow older and boys together, but not anymore, like between gender. But also, I'm happy that I have expertise here who can like know how to calculate these kind of groups, because we have had difficulties how to like how to use them in analysis, because they are not so easy to, like, it's easy to say like which of the 5 one person has said to be his friends, but it's difficult when it goes like this, that there are like different types of arrows going different ways. Yeah. Well, now we get to the point where I can say why I'm here. Yeah, basically, because my own background is in the field of educational sociology, then like this, when I started to know like I would like to do this more like motivational and psychological thing in my PhD, then Big Fish Little Pond theory was actually the first series that I got into, and I felt it was like really inspiring, and I thought that this is definitely something that I would like to do and test in my data and in the Finnish context. And but the problem is that I haven't like known how to do it. So therefore, when Herb came to Finland and it became clear that I could come and visit here and learn, well, I could say that from the best in this case, then it's like I was like so happy from that. And here are some like of the questions that I have been like thinking in my mind. Well, now it seems that this like peer group level is maybe the level that we are focusing on, and for me there are like many, I don't know how to do it, and Teresa has been like really helpful teaching me with this multi-level models. And now I'm just here like waiting to see what happens. But I'm really happy to be here. And now it was actually like maybe yesterday when I managed to do my first Big Fish models in the M+. And I tried to like put those in these and like slides, but there are quite many like question marks still. So I don't know if I should go through those. I have this one slide. Well, maybe this one, which is now the longitudinal model from grade 4 to 6, and it has been done now with this manifest application, and then there are all these covariates, which I thought that might be nice to include this model too. But here you can see that there is this kind of big fish, little pond effect. That means that like the achievement at the grade level, class level, explains negatively the pupil's self-concept in mathematics at grade 6. But I don't know. It was weird that in the cross-sectional models the effect is really small. So I don't know if there's something wrong still in the model. But I'm sure that we will work on that further.
So some of the interesting aspects of what Satu is looking at is that, first of all, the fact that we're looking at it longitudinally is something we don't oftentimes get a chance to do with the results with the big fish little pond effect is oftentimes cross-sectionally. So the fact that she's controlling for, here she's controlling for grade 4 self-concept and grade 4 achievement, as well as the contextual variable. And so that's basically saying not only is there a big fish little pond effect, but it's getting bigger over time because it's controlling for whatever the effect is on year 4. And we'll obviously elaborate on these models. But what's really unique about this data that we're going to be looking at is that Belgenda is helping Satu in terms of looking at the peer group structure. And so in this study, in this database, unlike most, the peer groups are selected within the class. So it's a within class, so the peer groups are actually nested within the class. So there's a potential of a 4-level big fish little pond effect kind of study here. We're looking at the school level, which probably isn't much because it's not big school differences. Class levels, which will probably be pretty big because they're big differences, and so that'll be where the big fish little pond comes in. But the really fascinating is what happens with the peer groups. So if you're in a peer group with bright kids within the class that you're in, does that have a positive or negative effect on your academic self-concept and some of the other motivational variables? And then possibly too, we can also look at the effects on achievement. There's domain specificity that the mind boggles with. There's an interesting aspect that kids change schools from primary to secondary school. And so the transition from the primary school to the secondary school brings in possibly a whole new frame of reference. There's the introduction of selective classes in different academic areas. And then there's also the longitudinal, going from early primary on into the end of compulsory secondary school. So it's a very, very rich study. And we're sort of at the early stages of just exploring the database and getting some ideas of what that is. But also, Satu has been thrown off the dock and told to swim, so to speak. So she's trying to master the doubly latent multi-level model, and she's only been working on that for a week, and it's already gotten some of the results from that. So she's doing quite well from that. And then it's been suggested that she needs to learn R so that she can understand what Belgian is going to be working on with her.
I didn't suggest.
It has been suggested, but not by Belgian. So yeah, she's on a steep learning curve. But very fascinating, interesting study. What do you think about the peer group? What do you think? What are your predictions? I mean, just because I've seen social comparisons so prevalent, I'm assuming that the peer group will have a negative effect, that being in a bright peer group will have a negative effect on motivation. But I would be quite interested and wouldn't be at all upset if it was a positive effect that your motivation in
You wouldn't be upset if the world turned out to be replaced.
But the peer groups are all nested within the class, so it's going to be it would have been better, I mean, not that, it's an awesome study, that's amazing data, but like if you had people who played with kids in other classes so that the peer group could look different from the class.
Yeah.
So here you've got like the fairly bright, homogeneous kids all playing with each other, and you have all the dumb kids playing with each other. It'd be nice if some of the bright kids played with the dumb kids, unless some of the dumb kids got into the language class, then you have a chance. So, but hopefully the end won't be, you know, actually parents stop encouraging kids to hang out with the good kids. They need to hang out with all the druggies and stoners who are getting bad grades, because they feel much better with themselves.
Well, but you know, this is the bastion of comprehensive education. I mean, they're probably the most comprehensive, the most focus of comprehensive education of pretty much any system in the world. And you know, there's certainly there was criticism of even the selective, what essentially amounts to tracking. Now, tell me, if you're in a selective class in one area, are you in general classes in another area?
No. It usually is like that you are in the same class like all the time. So therefore it's like, it is not actually that you get more teaching on some subject because it's only like 1 or 2 hours per week, but it is that you are in this group all the time. So it's like the classes are organized so that selective classes are their own and general are their own.
Go ahead.
I was just thinking the sport one might have more of this heterogeneity we're talking about, right? The groups will probably be bright and they'll be having all types in there.
How do they select kids to go into sports?
Well, there are like different types of sports sets.
Okay,
tests.
so
yeah, and also these classes, like some of the sports classes are like really hard to get in. That you almost have to be like master athlete to get in, especially on the 7th grade. But then,
selective too.
yeah, but then like in the beginning of school years, they are like more easily to get in. But then they.
But you don't have sport-specific measures, do you?
No.
Yeah.
So you can't.
Yeah.
Is there any evidence for individual differences in whether you get a little fish, big pond effect? And by the way, isn't that the one we're looking for rather than big fish, little pond? But anyway, are there individual differences? And if you might expect there would be related to things like growth mindset.
No.
So that's all been examined and there are no individual differences?
Undoubtedly there are individual differences, and we've probably looked at 20 or 30 variables, many of them many times. Yeah. And none of them are large enough to have any meaningful effect. I mean, there are interactions because these are big, huge data sets that we're working with. But certainly there's nothing so that somebody that's extreme in something doesn't have a big fish little pond effect. The big fish little pond effect is pretty consistent across the range of all the individual variables. It may be somewhat smaller or larger, but the moderations are really pretty small. That's fair, don't you think? Yeah. Now, these are looking at individual difference variables, and one of the things that will be quite interesting is to push the mindset a bit, because it just doesn't work. But we don't have I don't have a good study looking at that, but we've got something now that we're going to be able to look at the mind. Do you have mindset?
No.
Yeah, but I have another database where I'm looking at that now, and at least a preliminary analysis suggests that it doesn't. Mindset makes no difference. In fact, it might even work in the opposite direction.
Or other motivational variables. It doesn't have to be mindset.
No, we've looked at least 20 or 30. I mean, the most interesting one is achievement.
Meaning?
The L1 achievement. If you're bright in a bright class, and that makes no difference. Bright kids and not bright kids have the same size of the big fish little pond effect.
I was going to ask that about this model, because you don't have achievement of grade 6 and then here. Wouldn't that be important? I mean, that you're saying it probably won't be. Level 1 achievement. Grade 6 achievement.
you can talk to Teresa about this. This is really interesting, and this is something called the phantom effect. And if you introduce achievement here, then you ask, what is the effect of selective schools on achievement? And that's a really contentious and controversial topic. And whether or not this database can look at that or not, it probably can. But basically there's something called the phantom effect.
I've heard of the phantom.
Yes. The problem is that here we're saying the effects of something good or negative. And so if there's any bias, it's going to undermine the effect that we're looking at. But with the achievement, the kids that go into selective classes or selective schools are a whole lot brighter. And if we are able to explain half of that variance ahead of time by the controlling for it, that still leaves half the variance unexplained. And that half the variance unexplained is almost always in the direction of kids that go into bright classes do better. So the unexplained variance always is in the direction. And so of the bright classes doing better. And so the phantom effect is that as the models get more and more sophisticated, so we're controlling, we've got good longitudinal data where we've got good controls, and we're looking at controls at level 1 and level 2 and things like that. Now we've now got several studies where we're showing that the effect of achievement is, in some cases, is negative.
On academic self-concept?
No, on achievement. So the effect of going to a selective school on subsequent achievement is negative or negligible. And that's the phantom effect. And Teresa is now working on the third phantom effect study.
How do you build a career on saying the effect doesn't exist?
That's exactly how.
But she's giving it a name, so it feels like. That's the fancy
It's like a
system.
Batman effect.
No, she's asking, does it exist? You know? Like, is there Santa Claus?
Well, the phantom is the positive effect of selective schools on academic achievement.
The thing that I think maybe Felicia was getting at, which I would think you might find moderation for, is the reason people would be interested in this is that, oh my gosh, my child has low self-esteem, now they're not going to do this, or they're going to fail at things. So I think the moderation would be more at, so they have lower self-concept because they've evaluated themselves relative to others. Does it actually have consequences for real-world important things? And I would think, are there a subset of kids that, yeah, I'm not as smart as I think I am, but they're still becoming engineers and doctors and that kind of thing. So,
Absolutely.
Well, I guess some of the U.S. studies where they've got real longitudinal, the academic self-concept in high school predicts long-term results better than academic achievement. And the big fish, little pond effect is still evident after you leave school.
So, but if you had the part that was accounted for by big fish, little pond, how much of that would predict practical outcomes? You see what I mean?
6 percentage point difference in university.
Due to the big fish, little pond, it's an indirect effect.
Due to self-concept, yeah. And
Due to self-concept, that's not just big fish.
Yeah,
little pond.
it's much.
Marginal, okay, so it's a multiplication.
I think linked to Joseph's question is something like, in my mind, could you have low academic self-concept but nevertheless a high degree of well-being? Or are those two so strongly related?
No, I think that is possible. And I mean, one of the things that we contrast in our research is self-esteem, global self-esteem, and academic self-concept. And the selective school, the big fish, little pond effect has relatively small effect on self-esteem, and self-esteem isn't much related to academic self-concept.
Do you look at dropout with this study? Like in Finland, what is the rate of dropout? Is it less than in other countries?
Well, this is compulsory schooling. So
Oh, so they can't drop out.
there's no dropout. This is, well, who knows, but it would be, you know, 1/10% or something like that. I mean, kids stay,
Not a good place to ask.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, they don't drop out at
yeah.
that moment.
And
But they
does
don't
it
in
become
Australia
non-compulsory after the
You're
ninth?
talking ninth grade, aren't you? What
So
does
after
it
that-
go to?
Till 16.
16, so that's 10th?
That,
7th grade? 10th grade?
I mean, there's compulsory education here as
So
well,
10.
and so there's relatively little dropout.
Well, no, there's a fair amount of dropout from 10 to 12.
Sure there is, but not before that.
We have some at 9.
Yeah.
Things are starting to go wrong at 9.
Oh, yeah, and you know, I say that because, I mean, you're obviously working with a very, very special population in terms of dropout, and so I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. But mostly it doesn't happen very much here either. But I guess there's different ways of dropping out. I mean, you can be sitting in the class and still having dropped out, but that's sort of.
The interesting thing about that data, I mean, the genders on top of this, is you can actually look at, because the networks are changing, you can look at whether as more smart people come into your play group, does your self-concept tend to drop? So you can
It's
kind of
tough
look a little
because,
closer to
it's
the-
tough because there's only a couple of years where the sociometric stuff was done, is what,
3 and 5.
2 and 5.
2 and 5.
2 and 5.
Grade 2.
yeah.
But the other issue is the peer groups quite segregated by gender. Probably
Yeah.
just look at the moderation of gender on big fish.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't need to get to.
But within gender, there'd be differences.
Yeah,
I
it'd be
mean,
different.
Oh, yeah.
that's just, until they hit 6th grade, they play with just the same sex mostly.
But in that data, it's interesting because your social network questions are different. So there's 3 questions, right? One is about who do you want to play with
Yeah.
or hang with after school, and one is who do you want to work with, do schoolwork with.
Ah, yeah, that's true.
They're not exactly friendship networks as we.
No, that's true.
They're very different.
But they'd be the kind of people who'd be hanging out saying, oh, what did you get on your quiz, you know? But who do you want to learn? Yeah, that's
Who do you want to work with in class and who do you want to play with
That's the
after
smart
school
people, right?
may be different.
Is it?
Maybe
Mm.
different.
Very different. It's really the really brilliant people who work with brilliant people, but not to play with them. They
Oh,
don't-
really?
They play with the naughty ones.
I thought the dumb ones want to work with the brain.
One of the things that I'm interested in, so a year before, an article by Marsh and Parker was a book called Choosing the Right One.
Citation, personal.
Not me. This was a couple of years after I was born, so
Okay.
probably not quite that. And Robert Frank is the economist who talks about it. And what he's interested in is, mostly the big fish are interested in kids that get forced into frames of reference and the negative effect. And what he's interested in is how people are willing to trade other sorts of outcomes for better positions in frames of reference that they can choose. So people will forgo wages so that they can have higher status in another occupation. People might choose to work at ACU rather than City Uni and forego some wages because it makes them higher status. So what I'm interested in then is with the longitudinal stuff whether people that are positionally lower will choose to change their peer group in order to gain status.
What would
And
that
whether
status
they
be
do
for them in this context? What do you mean?
Status would be relative position within their peer group. So if they are the least smart in their friendship group,
So
are
it's
they
achievement,
more
it's
likely
measured by
to?
achievement.
But you're going to have also popularity. That's going to be
That's the other
really
thing.
big currency. Popularity
In
is
social groups.
yeah. So who does everybody say they want to
They want to play with that kid, yeah.
That person.
It's
So play
probably
with that
not the
person is
nerd.
immediately worth extra credit.
Yeah, I'm primarily interested in achievement. I don't know if you'd be able to do it with status, but it'd be interesting to see.
Is it status? I guess if everybody plays with you, that's higher status. I think so.
There's also some questions that we haven't looked at all, or I haven't thought about, is some questions about why you chose the school.
So when the transition from year 6 to year 7 is looking at that as there's some questions about why they chose the school, and that could get at some of the sorts of things that you're talking about.
And that choice isn't limited by their geographical location?
To an extent it is.
Yeah, to some extent it is, but still like from 6th to 7th grade you have like more options to choose like.
Well, they've got a backdoor selective school issue starting to sneak in, because you can choose a school that has an emphasis, a special class emphasis.
Yeah, because in the beginning of 7th grade there are like more these kind of selective classes. So it's like you can also choose like that kind of selective class which is more easy to get in, so that you can like that way like select actually your school. So it's like
Nothing wrong with working.
Satu,
Yeah.
so you mentioned at the beginning that in the 1990s there was neoliberalism started to push the Finnish system. We're also seeing in Sweden now a massive move in the neoliberal direction.
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether there's been any pushback on that, or
in Sweden.
in Finland, has there been any kind of push to kind of remove these kind of backdoor selective schools?
Well, yeah, there has been like discussion about this all the time. Like, is it good to have these selective classes or not, or is it? But it's like an ongoing discussion, so there's nothing like nothing's been changed after that. But at the moment, there's like a lot of discussion in Finland that our education system must be improved, because we are not anymore like best in PISA. So it's like that everybody is like worried of what will happen.
Yeah, you're only fourth best in the world.
Yeah. But now they're like, but I think that now they are like digitalizing everything. So that is like the answer for everything in the Finnish model now.
Well, look, Satu's going to be here another couple of weeks. She's in the office more or less across from Pupil on level 9. Feel free to stop by and say hello. And if you have any interesting questions about Finland or the data that she's looking at, or suggestions as to something she might look at, she's a very friendly person and would be glad to talk to you. But thank you very much.
Thank you.